Welcome to the Daily Vibe Casting. Today, SpaceX prepares to drop the biggest IPO in history, Bumble kills the swipe in a desperate AI pivot, and Elon Musk and Jensen Huang are on Air Force One trying to rewrite the global chip war.
We are really looking at a massive collision today. I mean, statecraft, capital markets, algorithmic manipulation, it is a heavy board.
It really is. And I want to jump straight into the highest stakes story of the day because the visual alone here is just incredible. So Sawyer Merritt shared this image that is absolutely tearing across the timeline right now.
Oh, yeah, the airplane photo.
Right. It's Elon Musk and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang. They're sitting at this cramped little conference table, casually drinking Diet Cokes, but the backdrop is the interior of Air Force One.
Which is just wild.
Yeah, they are literally flying with the presidential delegation to the Beijing summit with Xi Jinping.
And, the context around that photo is what makes it so critical. According to the market watchers at Watcher Guru, Jensen Huang was not on the original passenger manifest.
Wait, really? He was added late.
Yeah, he was a last-minute invitee, called up directly by the Oval Office. And he's already out there calling this, quote, one of the most important summits in human history. And honestly, he isn't wrong.
Because the future of global compute is sitting on that airplane tray table.
Exactly. The leverage being pulled behind the scenes right now is massive.
So let's break down the mechanics of what they're actually negotiating up there at 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
On the surface, you've got U.S.-China diplomacy, but you've also got AI hardware dominance and global energy markets all tangled up.
Right. To really grasp why Jensen is in that room, you have to look at the civil war happening inside the American tech sector right now.
Okay, lay that out for us.
So there's a huge fracture between the companies building AI software and the companies building the physical hardware. An independent researcher, through DXR, published a really brilliant teardown today of a recent leadership paper from Anthropic.
And Anthropic, just to be clear, they are a massive player in the software space, right? They build the frontier models.
Exactly. They build the brains. And their official stance in this paper is that the U.S. government needs incredibly strict export controls. They basically want to legally block American companies from selling advanced AI chips to China under the guise of national security, right, citing national security. But DXR points out the hidden motive here.
Wait, let me stop you there because the incentives feel kind of backwards. If Anthropic makes software, why do they care so aggressively about NVIDIA's hardware sales?
Because frankly, compute power is the only real moat in AI right now. I mean, Anthropic's entire multi-billion-dollar valuation relies on their software being demonstrably smarter than international competitors, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if you starve China of the physical hardware required to train massive models, you artificially freeze your competitors' timeline. The software labs are essentially using the flag of national security to protect their own commercial dominance.
Ah, I see. They want to permanently kneecap foreign labs by just cutting the cord on compute.
Exactly. But Jensen Huang is the guy selling the shovels. So his argument over that Diet Coke is going to be entirely different.
I imagine so. What's the NVIDIA counterplay?
It is the exact opposite strategy.
Yeah.
Huang's perspective is all about the dependency play. His argument is, if you cut a superpower off from your silicon, you just force them into autarky.
Like they have to build their own stuff.
Right. They suffer in the short term, sure, but you force them to build their own internal chip fabrication industry. You actually accelerate their self-sufficiency.
So NVIDIA's counter-argument is to, what, just flood the zone?
Precisely. If you aggressively flood the Chinese market with NVIDIA hardware, you ensure that their entire technological ecosystem is built on American architecture. You lock millions of Chinese engineers into using CUDA.
Okay, let's explain CUD for a second, because that feels like the invisible glue holding us all together.
Yeah, so CUDA is NVIDIA's proprietary software platform. It is literally the language developers have to use to communicate with NVIDIA chips. So if every Chinese AI lab is writing their infrastructure in CUDA, it becomes incredibly painful and expensive for them to ever switch to a domestic chip maker down the road.
You basically turn their tech sector into a permanent paying subscriber.
Exactly. You lock in the American hardware monopoly. But the trade-off is, doing that hands them the raw compute power they need to rival Anthropic software.
Wow, it's a brutal trade-off. I mean, you're either sacrificing the American hardware monopoly to protect the software builders, or you're sacrificing the software builders' lead to maintain the hardware dominance.
It's like two people on a lifeboat violently disagreeing on how to paddle.
Mm.
while surrounded by sharks.
And it gets even more complex when you look at the acro leverage being applied here.
Yeah.
So Kobay's letter highlighted data showing that at the exact same time, Washington is threatening imminent, crushing sanctions against Chinese companies buying Iranian oil.
Which is just the ultimate second-order effect of this summit. When you step back and look at the board, Iranian oil flows are being used as a bludgeon to negotiate semiconductor export policies.
Everything is connected.
Yeah, statecraft isn't happening in silos anymore. Energy markets, silicon fabrication, artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
It is all the same conversation now. It's this three-dimensional chess match to decide who controls the infrastructure of the 21st century.
And while that fight over infrastructure plays out at 30,000 feet, I want to bring this back down to the capital markets. Because we are seeing the ultimate American hardware flex right now. We need to talk about the $2 trillion space whale.
Oh man, the scale of this liquidity event is, it's going to rewrite market physics.
It really is. So Unusual Whales is reporting that SpaceX is preparing to drop its IPO prospectus as early as next week.
Which we've been waiting for years.
Literally decades. And they are targeting a staggering $70 to $75 billion raise at a $1.75 to $2 trillion valuation. If this executes, it obliterates Saudi Aramco as the largest IPO in the history of the global markets.
Yeah, but let's pause and apply some real scrutiny to the mechanics of a $2 trillion price tag here. I mean, the audited 2025 revenue for SpaceX is rumored to be sitting around $15 to $16 billion.
Which is real money.
Oh, it's a cash machine. $16 billion in revenue from heavy launch capabilities and the Starlink network. They effectively have a monopoly on low Earth orbit logistics. But valuing a $16 billion revenue stream at $2 trillion?
The multiple is insane.
Right. That implies a growth curve that practically requires interplanetary commerce to justify.
But the institutional demand is going to be deafening, right? You have an entire generation of retail and institutional investors who have just been locked out of SpaceX's private funding rounds for 20 years.
And that leads to the real danger here, which is the liquidity vacuum.
Explain that.
Think about the stock market like a massive interconnected harbor. When the tide pulls out to fill a basin as large as SpaceX, when you suck $75 billion in liquid capital out of the system in a single event, the water level drops everywhere else.
Right, the boats hit the ocean floor. Where is that $75 billion actually coming from?
People will have to liquidate. Asset managers, retail investors, hedge funds. They will systematically sell off their positions in mid-cap SaaS companies, in Apple, in Amazon, just to free up cash to get an allocation in SpaceX.
So we're going to see a massive structural sell-off just to fund this one offering.
Exactly. This IPO is going to act like a financial black hole, just warping the valuation of literally every other tech company on the board.
Which raises a pretty cynical question. Is this IPO actually about raising capital to build the infrastructure for Mars, or is this just the most perfectly timed liquidity exit for early insiders before a market contraction?
I mean, when you look at the broader macro environment, an exit of this magnitude is usually a pretty loud signal that the smart money believes the private markets have peaked.
Well, the public markets will certainly test that theory, but, I want to pivot from these astronomical valuations in space to the very grounded physical reality of what AI is doing right here on Earth.
Let's do it.
Because while we're debating trillion-dollar IPOs, the robotics sector quietly hit a terrifyingly practical milestone this week.
This is the moment where capital expenditure officially comes for human labor.
Yeah. So Adcock Brett, the founder of Figure AI, shared an update from their testing facility. They build these bipedal humanoid robots. They affectionately name them Bob, Frank, and Gary. Naturally. And he announced that these models just completed a 24-hour endurance test of continuous nonstop package sorting. We are talking over 28,000 packages handled without a single break.
And we really need to explain why 24 hours is the holy grail here. Because, a casual observer might just think, okay, a machine moves some boxes, big deal. But humanoid robotics have historically hit a hard wall at the 3 or 4 hour mark.
Because of heat and battery limits, right?
Heat, battery, and what's called perception drift. When you have a machine with onboard power, articulating motors, real-time visual processing, it generates an immense thermal load.
It just bakes itself.
Right. Historically, the compute systems would physically overheat, or the visual perception models would experience memory leaks and drift. The robot would literally start hallucinating where the box was and just collapse.
Wow.
So managing the thermal load and the neural network efficiency to run a bipedal robot for 24 hours straight without a critical failure, That means you have solved the hardware bottleneck.
which completely flips the economic model of warehousing on its head. It's that shift from OpEx to CapEx. You're no longer paying an operating expense. A human's hourly wage, healthcare, breaks. You make a one-time capital expenditure to buy the robot, and your marginal cost of labor drops to the cost of electricity.
Exactly. The robots optimize the physical warehouse. Meanwhile, the software engineers who are building the brains for these robots are out here trying to optimize their own brutal workflows.
Which transitions perfectly to this hilarious but kind of revealing video that OpenAI devs posted today.
Oh, laptops.
Yes. It was this montage of developers doing totally absurd things to keep their laptops awake while running heavy local AI models. They had laptops balanced on photocopiers, left open on the passenger seats of moving cars, literally sitting on curbs and toilet seats.
It was such a great visual representation of how clunky deploying this technology still is.
But it was a setup. It was a setup for a massive product release. OpenAI officially launched Codex integration directly into the ChatGPT mobile app.
Which fundamentally changes the tether between the developer and the desk.
Entirely. So let's explain how this works. Previously, if an AI agent was writing complex code for you, you had to sit at your terminal, watch the logs, manually approve the changes. But now, the heavy lifting, the actual agent executing the code, runs securely on a Mac Mini back in your office. But the steering wheel is on your iPhone.
Right.
You can be walking down the street, your phone pings, and it shows you a code diff, which is just a highlighted breakdown of the old code versus the new code the AI wants to write. You review it, tap approve on your screen, and the remote machine executes it.
Look, it is undeniably a brilliant technical achievement. It solves a massive friction point. But let's look at the second-order effect on human behavior here.
Okay, hit me.
Does this tool actually give the developer the freedom to leave the office and go to the beach? Or does the employer now expect 24/7 code deployment and project management from the beach?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You solve a compute bottleneck, sure, but you create a cultural expectation of permanent, inescapable availability.
The boundaries between work and life just dissolve into the cloud.
Exactly. And managing that cloud infrastructure is getting incredibly difficult, which leads to Andrew Wang's latest announcement. The machine learning pioneer just launched a new training course with AMD called Transformers in Practice. And what's vital here is that he isn't teaching the theoretical math of AI anymore.
Right. We are exiting the magic trick phase and entering the plumbing phase.
Yes. He's teaching developers how to actually diagnose bottlenecks, fix slow inference. Sometimes inference being the time it takes for the AI to actually generate a response and deal with hardware optimization.
Because if your inference is slow, your application is dead on arrival.
Completely. Partnering with a hardware giant like AMD for this course shows that the industry realizes the hype doesn't matter if you bankrupt your company on cloud compute costs. The real skill right now is hardware-aware optimization.
I agree, but I kind of have to push back a little bit here because the hype cycle is still very much alive and well on the cultural fringes. We are not purely in the plumbing phase yet.
Fair point.
Testing Catalog reported today that fans dissecting paparazzi photos of Kanye West spotted him holding this mysterious shiny black spherical device.
The infamous orb.
The orb! Rumors are exploding that it is OpenAI's highly classified Dime wearable device, which was teased in a leaked Super Bowl ad and then scrubbed from the internet.
Of course it is.
And it's not just consumer hardware hype. Tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson posted a wild thought experiment today. He proposed a scenario where a mutated virus like a highly lethal hantavirus triggers a global pandemic tomorrow. Very. And Johnson claims that the combination of decentralized AI and biotech would resolve it almost instantly. He's talking about an AI pipeline sequencing the genome in 4 hours, mapping the proteins with AlphaFold, screening 10,000 drugs in a day, and designing 50 vaccine candidates simultaneously.
Okay, we need to draw a very hard line right here,
Right.
because this is the exact danger of the current news cycle.
Yeah.
You have to separate the infrastructure builders from the vibe merchants.
That's a sharp distinction. Break that down for me. Why is Johnson's vision purely a vibe?
Well, figure AI getting a bipedal robot to manage its thermal load and sort packages for 24 hours. That is infrastructure. That is a measurable physical reality operating under the laws of thermodynamics.
Right.
Brian Johnson outlining a sci-fi utopia where an untested AI pipeline perfectly cures a global pandemic in 3 weeks. That is vibe merchant territory.
It's just a thought experiment.
It is extrapolating software capabilities into physical fantasy. It completely ignores the friction of clinical trials, manufacturing supply chains, and, the chaotic complexity of human biology.
Mhm.
AI can map a protein today, sure, but it cannot magically manufacture and distribute a billion glass vials of a sterile vaccine next week.
Mhm.
We cannot let the real breakthroughs blind us to the manufactured hype.
That is such a critical point because when companies realize they can't actually deliver the sci-fi fantasy, they start using the concept of AI to mask their failing business models.
Oh, absolutely.
And that brings us perfectly to the consumer algorithm trap. Let's look at what's happening with Bumble today.
Yeah, let's talk about Bumble.
Polymarket data highlighted this massive pivot. Bumble is officially killing the iconic left-right swipe mechanic. They are completely removing the feature that defined their entire brand and replacing it with an AI matchmaker called the Bee.
And if you read the press releases, the narrative is that this is a bold leap into the future of intentional dating. But let's look at the underlying mechanics. Bumble's paying user base dropped 21% in the first quarter of this year.
21% is huge.
That's massive. The left-right swipe mechanic was originally designed to gamify human connection. It turned dating into a slot machine. But slot machines eventually cause massive user fatigue. The product is fundamentally broken.
So they're replacing the slot machine with vector matching. Instead of a binary hot or not, the AI is supposed to read your conversation history, analyze your behavioral preferences, and serve you highly compatible profiles without the manual labor of swiping.
I mean, that is the technical theory. But realistically, it is a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed. Polymarket noted today that there is a 22% market implied probability of a total AI bubble bursting this year.
Wow.
Yeah. Slapping the label AI matchmaker on a dating app isn't going to fix the underlying psychological exhaustion that users feel toward commoditized dating. It is a desperate play for user retention, just wrapped in the buzzword of the year.
And speaking of the dark psychology of user acquisition, we have to look at the post from Nikita Beer today. He's a serial app founder, sold companies to Facebook and Discord, and he just openly shared the most successful growth hack of his entire career.
This was why.
He literally incorporated a company under the legal name TapGet Inc.
It is so cynical, but mechanically, it is brilliant.
It is. Let's explain why this actually works. In the iOS App Store, the legal name of the developer appears in small text directly to the left of the download button, and the download button simply says, Get.
Right there.
So when a user looked at his app, the user interface subtly commanded their brain, tap get. It bypasses the prefrontal cortex and exploits a natural cognitive response to UI design, driving massive download conversions without spending a single dollar on marketing.
It is the perfect proof that modern consumer tech is no longer about building better tools. I mean, it is largely just psychological warfare. It is entirely about finding exploits in human cognition.
And the ultimate cognitive exploit is the recommendation algorithm itself. The writer Chunked Fan posted a meme today that went violently viral because it perfectly captures this trap.
Oh, the Ed Harris meme.
Yes. He took a clip of a crowded bar scene from The Simpsons, but he edited it so every single character's face was replaced by Ed Harris playing Christoph, the manipulative director from the movie The Truman Show.
It is the most accurate visual representation of the X or TikTok algorithm I've ever seen.
Exactly. The joke is about what happens when you like a single Ed Harris post on X. You provide the algorithm with one tiny micro interaction of engagement, and the algorithm is so desperate for your attention that it overfits the data instantly.
Right.
It violently floods your entire timeline with identical, repetitive Ed Harris content. Suddenly, you are trapped in a Truman Show bubble constructed entirely of one fleeting interest.
And the second-order effect of that overfitting is terrifying when you realize the content filling those bubbles is becoming entirely synthetic. Look at the data we tracked from an account called Bubble Bath Girl today.
Oh, right, the Tiger Woods video.
Yes. The account posted this incredibly optimistic video of Tiger Woods. He looks healthy. He's walking confidently down a tarmac after supposedly returning from a month of rehab in Switzerland. The caption talks about how he is going to shock the world, win major championships at age 50. It's a beautifully crafted, heartwarming narrative.
The problem is the video is completely fabricated.
Entirely fake. Within hours, the replies exposed the footage as being AI generated. The lighting was wrong, the gait was unnatural, it just wasn't real. But because it hit the exact emotional triggers the algorithm looks for, it generated hundreds of thousands of views and massive engagement before reality could catch up with the synthetic lie.
Man. So when you pull all of this together, look at the incredible irony of the world we've mapped out today on this deep dive.
It's a lot.
We are outsourcing the friction of our romantic lives to an AI matchmaker because the slot machines exhausted us. Our attention is being hijacked by developers legally changing their names to exploit our button-pushing reflexes. Our feeds are flooded with completely fabricated videos of celebrities curated by algorithms that isolate us into hyper-specific echo chambers.
Right.
We are drowning in synthetic reality, all while the actual future of the global economy, the real physical tech war, is being fought over silicon chips on Air Force One and humanoid robots systematically replacing human labor in a warehouse.
We are being constantly distracted by the vibe merchants while the infrastructure builders quietly rewrite the physics of the world. Which brings me to my prediction for tomorrow, based entirely on the trajectory we are seeing today.
Okay, I want to hear it. What's the prediction?
Within the next 48 hours, a major legacy consumer brand, one that's staring down the barrel of terrible Q2 earnings, is going to announce a completely fabricated vaporware AI hardware pivot. And despite everything we know about the mechanics of the hike cycle and the thermal limits of these devices, the market is going to inexplicably reward them with a 10% bump in their stock price. The desperation to believe the AI narrative is just too strong for the market to ignore right now.
Sadly, the mechanics of capital markets right now suggest you are dead on, which leaves you with a thought that is kind of hard to shake. We started today looking at the billionaires on Air Force One securing the hardware, and we ended looking at the algorithms shaping our psychological reality.
Yeah.
If our news feeds are fully synthetic, our code is writing itself while our phones skewer the servers, and robots are quietly sorting our physical goods, what exactly is left for us to do tomorrow morning?
That is the trillion-dollar question, and the market hasn't priced it in yet.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the wire. Keep your eyes open, watch the second order effects, and we will see you next time.